The witch who saved me. Cold rain smacked Rowan's cheeks as he sprinted through the black-barked pines, each breath a ragged gasp that burned his throat. Moonlight slashed between branches, turning the forest floor into a net of silver and shadow. Behind him lay the manor's distant lantern glow, the place where his father's belt cracked and his mother's silence hurt worse. Ahead waited only darkness, and maybe freedom, if he could stay alive long enough to claim it. Roots snagged his bare feet. He stumbled, caught himself, ran harder. A distant howl rolled through the night. Not quite wolf, not quite anything he had heard before, and his skin prickled in warning. He pressed on, lungs ablaze, until pounding blood drowned out every sound except the hammer of his heart. A growl vibrated from a low ridge. Rowan pivoted at the noise, but too late. A hulking shadow burst from behind a fallen spruce, eyes like coals, fur bristling. It was no ordinary beast. Its ribs glowed faintly blue, as if some cruel spell burned beneath the hide. Terror pinned Rowan in place. He tried to back away, tripped on a root, and crashed hard onto his shoulder. Pain shot down his arm, and the creature advanced, breath steaming. Rowan curled his knees to his chest and threw an arm over his face. He had endured beatings, hunger, endless nights without warmth, but nothing compared to the certainty that sharp teeth would soon tear him apart. He braced for agony. A gentle voice slipped between the growls. "Enough. He's under my protection." Soft light flared, washing the trees in pale gold. The beast flinched and retreated with a whimper. Rowan lowered his arm and found himself blinking up at a child perhaps 2 years younger than he was, 11 at most, barefoot on the moss. Her pale skin glowed like frost in moonshine, and her large eyes shimmered between green and amber. Tiny sparks danced along her fingertips. She knelt beside him. "You're hurt." Rowan's throat worked soundlessly. At last he whispered, "Who are you?" "My name isn't important tonight." She touched his bruised shoulder. Warmth gathered beneath her palm, soothing the pain. "But you are safe. Come." She helped him stand. He expected to see fear or judgment in her eyes. Instead, there was pure concern, as though they were lifelong friends reunited. He followed her deeper into the forest, passing beneath arching limbs that seemed to bend aside at her approach. The monstrous creature slunk in the underbrush, eyes now docile, watching them like a trained hound. Soon they entered a small hollow lit by fireflies. A stone shelter, half ruin, half miracle, leaned into an ancient oak. She guided him inside, coaxed embers in a hearth to life with a soft hum, and wrapped a woolen cloak around his shoulders. Rowan's teeth still chattered, but not entirely from cold. "Thank you." She sat beside him, knees tucked. "Rest. No one will hurt you here." He tried to stay awake, to ask how she did any of this, but exhaustion hit like a tide. His eyelids sagged, and he faded into dreamless dark. When dawn slipped through cracks in the shelter, Rowan woke to birdsong and the smell of pine. The girl was gone. On the hearth lay a slice of honeyed bread and a small wooden pendant carved in the shape of an oak leaf. He clutched the token, heart twisting with gratitude and confusion. Outside, the enchanted forest stood silent, indifferent, as if the night's wonders had never happened. He walked until a road appeared, and by luck or fate, a passing trader found him. Days later, the Order's black-robed men arrived in the village, seeking orphans for proper upbringing. They promised food, shelter, purpose. Rowan, with nothing but bruises and a secret pendant, accepted, and the Order remade him. Years blurred into drills, sermons, and the iron weight of witch hunter oaths. The night in the forest faded like a fever dream, but sometimes Rowan would waken before dawn, tasting honeyed bread and smelling pine smoke. He kept the pendant hidden in a leather pouch against his chest, though he could no longer recall the girl's face, only the gentleness in her hands. Rain sheeted across the courtyard of Crestfall Keep when Grand Marshal Tiber seized Rowan's shoulder. A witch of rare power has made the Elderwood her den. She bends illusions, commands beasts. You will lead the hunt." Rowan bowed. "As you wish." Inside he felt nothing, only the familiar chill that came before every mission. Yet a quiet pulse stirred when he heard the forest's name. Elderwood. Had that been the place? He shrugged the thought aside. Duty. First. Always. 2 days later, he rode beneath Elderwood's towering eaves. Sunlight barely penetrated the canopy, and the air smelled of wet earth and sap. He dismissed his squad at the perimeter. This witch moved unseen, and too many boots would betray them. Alone, he crossed into silent green gloom. The deeper he went, the stronger a sense of déjà vu pressed on him. Ferns brushed his boots like beckoning fingers. A brook sang a tune that teased memory. He shook himself, scanned for glyph traps, and advanced. Strange lights glimmered among trunks, vanishing when he tried to focus on them. Branches above twisted until they formed arches reminiscent of cathedral vaults. Still, no attack came. Instead, a whisper threaded the air. Rowan. He whirled, sword clearing scabbard. Only drifting mist answered. He pressed on. The path curled until it spilled into a clearing. At its center rose a massive oak, whose roots bulged from the ground like sleeping serpents. And at the base stood a woman. She wore a gown the color of late summer leaves, hair falling in an unruly river dark as raven wings. Her eyes gleamed green gold, and when she lifted her hand, the forest hushed. "I wondered when you'd return," she said. Rowan kept his blade steady, but his pulse stumbled. She looked young yet ageless, calm yet deadly. Power radiated from her, subtle as moonrise. "You know my name." "I do. Then you know why I'm here." A faint smile curved her lips. "You think you do." She turned and walked toward the oak, inviting without fear. Confused by her composure, Rowan followed at a cautious distance. Inside the hollow trunk, a staircase spiraled downward, lit by silver luminescence. She led him to a chamber lined with crystalline roots. In the center, a table of living wood held a single item, a pendant carved like an oak leaf. Rowan's breath caught. He touched his chest where his pouch lay hidden. The pendant on the table matched his perfectly, grain for grain. She watched him with soft eyes. "You lost it that night. I carved another while you slept, but you slipped the first into your pocket in the morning. I let you keep it." Lightning flashed through Rowan's mind, firelight, gentle hands, a lullaby hummed over him. His knees nearly buckled. "You," he whispered. "It was you." "Yes." She stepped closer, voice gentle. "I'm Elra." Memories crashed in roaring detail. The beast pacified by light. The warmth of the cloak, waking alone, pendant in hand. He stared at the grown woman before him, heart hammering against ribs. "You saved me." "I did what anyone with power and compassion should do." Her smile held sorrow. "But not everyone chooses kindness, do they?" Rowan thought of the order's sermons of witches painted as monsters. Shame prickled his skin. "I have hunted your kind for years." "You were only given one side of the story." Elra lifted a hand, as if to touch his cheek, then lowered it. "I wondered if you would remember me before you drew blood." Rowan sheathed his sword, throat thick. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Believe what you felt that night. Believe what you feel now." Silence stretched, heavy with decades of longing neither had named. Elra looked away first, pain flickering across her face. "Come, you should eat, and dry your cloak." Rowan followed her into an adjoining alcove where a hearth crackled. She poured tea fragrant with apple blossom. They sat cross-legged on woven rugs, knees almost touching. He studied her hands, slender, strong. "Why didn't you leave? You must have sensed hunters approaching." "This forest is my home. I won't abandon it or the spirits I guard." She met his gaze. Besides, I needed to see what had become of the boy I once saved. Rowan swallowed. I became your enemy. Did you? Her voice softened. You stand before me now without raising a weapon. Your eyes look at me like they did that night, filled with wonder, with hope. I don't sense hatred in you, Rowan. He stared into his cup. I've done things. Nothing can erase them. Redemption is choosing differently when you finally have all the truth. She leaned forward. What will you choose? The question coiled in him, unsettling and exhilarating all at once. Firelight danced across her hair, turning strands to copper. Rowan remembered lying beside a hearth just like this, feeling safe for the first time in his life. A sudden roar shook the chamber. The crystalline walls quivered, scattering glittering dust. Rowan stood, sword in hand, though he hadn't thought to draw it. Elra sighed. The forest wards are warning me. Your order's scouts reached the outer glade. Rowan's pulse sped. He was rarely tracked. Clearly they hadn't trusted him to face a witch alone. You have to hide. I don't hide. She rose, regal and fierce. But I do protect what is mine. Rowan stepped closer than caution allowed. They will burn this forest to find you. Elra's eyes flared gold. Then let them try. The ground rumbled above. Somewhere distant, metal clanged. Rowan imagined torches, crossbows, chains forged with sigil steel, everything he had wielded for the order. Now each image filled him with dread. He touched her wrist. Let me speak to them, I can call them off. They won't listen. Their minds are shackled to fear of magic. She studied him. Are you? Rowan remembered the first time he saw her conjure light, how it felt like sunrise after endless night. No. She placed her hand over his where it rested on her wrist. Then stay with me. Trust the forest. Before he could answer, vines burst from the floor, weaving a wide spiral that lifted them gently upward. In moments they were outside atop the oak's highest bough, high enough to see lanterns flickering among trees to the east. Elra's hair whipped in rising wind, though the air at ground level remained still. The forest listens to my heart, she said. It remembers you too. Rowan stared at the distant torches, men he had trained beside. They'll kill me for treason. Elra's fingers hovered near his cheek, hesitant. What is life if lived in chains? Words abandoned him. At that height, moonlight bathed them in silver solitude. Rowan's pulse thundered. He took her hand and pressed it to his chest where the pendant lay. She felt its shape through leather, and her breath caught. All these years, he murmured, you were the only truth I couldn't forget. Her lashes fluttered. Remember it fully. He bent, lips brushing hers. The kiss was tentative, trembling. But beneath their fear, a spark leapt, burning through years of denial. She answered him, fingers sliding into his hair. Rowan's eyes stung. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to shared breath and whispered memory. A horn blared below. The torches had divided, moving in a pincer toward the oak. Rowan pulled back, forehead resting against hers. They're coming. Then let us greet them together. The wind settled into a hush after the horn's echo faded. Rowan and Elra still stood atop the ancient oak, foreheads touching, breath mingling. Beneath them, the forest stirred with warning creaks as scouts pressed closer. Lanterns bobbed between trunks like angry fireflies. I can draw them off, Rowan said, voice low. Tell them I found nothing. Elra studied his face, every plane and shadow. You would lie to save me? I would tell any story that keeps them from harming you. He paused. But they know me too well. If they sense doubt, they will keep searching. Her fingers tightened around his. Then doubt must become conviction. You mean to fight? I mean to protect what we both believe in, but there is still time before first light. She glanced east, where the horizon blushed faintly. Come. The forest has a heart no hunter has ever touched. There, we may decide together. Vines lowered them to soft loam. Elra led him along winding footpaths that shifted behind them, confusing pursuit. Moonlight spilled in silver ribbons, but Rowan noticed something new. Each leaf they passed seemed to turn toward Elra like petals following the sun. The air itself softened around her. They reached a glade so perfectly round it felt sculpted by silent hands. At its center lay a spring-fed pool no wider than a cottage, glassy and black, reflecting stars. Bioluminescent blooms ringed the water, casting gentle blue halos. Rowan sensed power older than any spell he had studied, humming just below hearing. Elra knelt and dipped her fingertips. Ripples raced across the surface, then stilled, showing Rowan's reflection beside hers. Hunter and witch, shoulder to shoulder. "This is where the forest was born," she whispered. "Its first trees drank from this pool. Few are ever invited here." Rowan crouched beside her, the hush filling him with awe. "Why bring me?" "Because the child I saved never left this place." She touched her own chest. "He lives in the way you step, the questions you ask, and he deserves to stand where his fear ended." Rowan traced the pool's mirror. "I have tried to silence him for years. He is your truest self." Elra's gaze softened. "Let him speak." Rowan closed his eyes. Memories pressed forward, the sting of his father's belt, the smell of stale ale on breath, his mother turning away, then the forest, the beast, the girl's steady voice. A shudder racked him. He breathed out, and tears he did not know he carried dropped into the sacred water. Circles of silver spread, fading into stillness. Elra touched his wet cheek. "All this time you carried their wounds." "They taught me strength was obedience," his voice cracked. "Your kindness confused me more than cruelty." "Cruelty is simple," she murmured. "Mercy asks us to change." Rowan opened his eyes, her face hovered inches away, luminous in the blue glow. "You waited for me. I believed you would remember." She brushed her thumb across his jaw where a faint scar lingered, souvenir of some early hunt. "Even if you did not, I wanted to show you who you truly are." "And who am I?" "Someone who begged the forest to let him live, not to strike back. Someone who once chose gentleness, before the world taught him to fear it." Her voice trembled. "The same boy who sheltered under my cloak is the man kneeling before me." Rowan's reply dissolved into a breath as he leaned forward. Their lips met softly, the kiss tentative, as if new language formed between them. Warmth unfurled inside Rowan's ribs, loosening knots bound since childhood. Elra sighed against his mouth, fingertips sliding into his hair. The world narrowed to shared pulse and night birds singing. When they parted, Rowan rested his forehead to hers. "If the Order finds us, they will brand you an abomination, and me, a traitor. Then let us decide our fate tonight," she said, voice steady. "Not wait for theirs." She rose, guiding him to a patch of moss beside the spring. Rowan followed, heart thudding with wonder and dread. He sat, legs folded, and Elra knelt across from him. Between them shimmered the pool, reflecting two faces, slowly shedding years of loneliness. "Tell me a memory," she said, "one you never shared." Rowan swallowed. "After the Order took me, they burned a village rumored to shelter witches. I watched homes turn to ash. I told myself it was justice." He shook his head. "But I thought of that night in the forest, and the idea that a witch could be gentle would not leave me. I hated myself for doubting." Elra reached across the water, palm up. Rowan placed his hand in hers, thumb brushing her knuckles. "And you?" he asked. "I used to visit that shelter each solstice," she replied. "I would sit by the cold hearth and imagine you returning. Years passed, but whenever the wind shook the roof, I pretended it was your footsteps." She laughed softly, but tears shone. Hope can be lonely. Rowan lifted her hand to his lips. "I'm sorry it took me so long." You arrived when you were ready to see me. She leaned closer. Ready to see yourself. Silence fell, thick with something tender yet fierce. Rowan felt the night wrap around them like velvet. Without thinking, he rose to his knees and drew her into his arms. Elra melted against him, warm and sure. They kissed again, slower, exploring. His fingers traced the curve of her back through soft fabric, marveling at the simple fact of closeness after years of armored solitude. She pulled back just enough to speak. Rowan, there is no shame in wanting gentle things. He smiled, sudden and unguarded. Teach me. Her answering smile glowed brighter than the flowers. She guided him onto the moss, bodies aligned, breaths sinking. They shed layers of leather and linen, movements unhurried, each reveal a conversation of touch. He ran his hands over her shoulders, memorizing the shape of freedom. She pressed kisses along the scar on his collarbone, mending shame with tenderness. Moonlight slid over skin and cloth until all that remained were two souls mapping one another in quiet gasps and whispered names. When Rowan entered her, it was less a conquest than a homecoming, two halves of a long-kept promise sealing at last. Elra arched beneath him, fingers threading with his. The pool glimmered beside them, reflecting not bodies, but light swirling silver gold, as if their union stirred the magic of the grove itself. They moved together in a rhythm older than the forest, breath becoming prayer. Rowan's chest tightened with something achingly sweet. He buried his face in her neck, and she held him as though he might break and needed mending with every heartbeat. When waves of release claimed them, they clung to each other, laughter mixing with tears neither tried to hide. Time drifted. Eventually they lay tangled, limbs relaxed, listening to the low murmur of trees. Dawn's first birds called. Pale blush seeped into sky. Rowan traced circles on Elra's arm. I never believed peace could feel like this. It's yours now, she murmured, if you choose it. He stared at the rising light, thinking of the order. Rows of boys drilled to fear, masters preaching purity won through fire. He pictured Marshal Tiber's cold eyes. They will not let us go. Then we make them relearn fear, Elra said softly. Fear of a love they cannot burn. Rowan propped himself on an elbow. I can't ask this forest to shed blood for me. You aren't asking. She touched his chest. The forest remembers your gratitude. It chooses you as much as you choose me. A distant shout split the calm. Rowan sat up, senses flaring. Steel clanged against trunk, boots pounded earth. He counted at least a dozen voices. Elra stood, pulling on her gown, every inch a queen of shadows and dawn. Rowan dressed quickly, sliding his sword into its sheath, though he doubted he would use it. She raised her hands. Vines curled from the glade's edge, weaving into living walls. Lantern light flashed through gaps as hunters pressed near. They will cut through those, Rowan warned. They'll tire before the forest does. Elra gestured to the pool. But come. I wish them to see us in truth, not in hiding. Rowan followed her along a narrow path that wound upward to a natural balcony jutting over the main trail. There, in gathering dawn, the hunters emerged. Chainmail, crossbows, crimson tabards marked with the sigil of the order, a serpent devouring its tail. At their head strode Marshal Tiber, gray-bearded, eyes as hard as flint. He halted when he saw Rowan and Elra above. Hunter Rowan, Tiber barked, voice ringing. By sacred oath you are commanded to stand aside. Deliver the witch for judgment. Rowan's heart thundered, but Elra placed a calming hand on his back. He stepped forward to the edge. Marshal, lower your weapons. She is under my protection. Murmurs rippled through the ranks, Tiber's brows knit. Protection? You forget your place. Hunters protect mankind from such abominations. Elra's voice floated down like song. Abomination, a word used by men who fear what they don't understand. Tiber's mouth twisted, silence, devil. Rowan's blood heated. She is no devil. She saved my life when I was a boy. She has saved many lives. Spare us tales of enchantment, the marshal snapped. Your mind is compromised. Step aside. Rowan drew his sword, slowly, deliberately, and planted the tip in the earth, hands atop the pommel. I will not. Gasps. Hunters lifted crossbows. Tiber's stare hardened. Then you break your vows. I keep the first vow, Rowan answered. To protect the innocent. Elra's hand slipped into his. Around them the trees groaned, bark splitting to reveal veins of pale light. Vines writhed along branches, aiming like serpents at the soldiers. Tiber noticed. His voice shook, though he tried to mask it. Men, take aim. Rowan's pulse pounded. He glanced at Elra. They will massacre themselves if we force a fight. She squeezed his hand. There is another way. Let me speak through you. He frowned. And what do you mean? Trust me. Her eyes glowed. Rowan nodded once. Elra lifted her other hand, palm toward his chest. A surge of warmth flowed into him. The pendant beneath his shirt blazed. Suddenly, Rowan's mind filled with rustling leaves, bird calls, the slow breath of ancient roots. Words rose in his throat. Soft, resonant, tinged with power. He addressed the hunters, but the voice bore the hush of wind through branches. Lay down your arms. The forest has watched your torches scorch countless clearings. It will not suffer fire today. Return to your keeps. Learn mercy, or never return. The hunters shifted, fear dawning behind helmets. Tiber's jaw worked soundlessly. Rowan continued, the power flowing smoother now. I was one of you. I believed fear was strength. Now I see strength as choosing compassion, even when the world calls it treason. Some lowered their crossbows, others stepped back. Tiber's face reddened. You are bewitched. Wind roared through the trees. 1,000 leaves spiraled upward, forming towering shapes that loomed over the path. Glowing eyes opened in bark and stone. The earth shook. Rowan drew a breath that tasted of sap and sunrise. No, I am awakened. Tiber stumbled as roots cracked the ground at his feet. His men scrambled. Crossbows clattered. The marshal glared up with mingled rage and terror. This is not the end, Rowan. It is the end of hate, Rowan said. Tiber spat, then signaled retreat. Hunters backed away, snatching fallen weapons, some glancing fearfully at living shadows tracking their every step. Within moments, the company vanished into morning fog. Silence returned, broken only by Rowan's ragged breath. The roots settled. Leaf spirits dissolved into drifting petals. Birds sang tentative notes. Rowan looked at Elra. Her eyes still glowed faintly, but exhaustion shadowed her features. He caught her as her knees buckled. I'm fine, she whispered, leaning into him. The forest lent its voice. It always asks a price. He cradled her against his chest. Then rest, I'll guard you. She smiled, eyes half-lidded. You already have. Rowan pressed a kiss to her hair. Dawn light spilled through branches, bathing them in gold. For the first time in years, he felt entirely himself. Hunter no more. Survivor reborn. Beyond the trees, the world shifted, but here in Elderwood's heart, two souls breathed in unison, waiting for whatever sunrise would bring. When the echo of the hunter's retreat faded into distant rustle, Rowan lifted Elra into his arms and carried her back through winding trails lit by slanted dawn light. She protested in soft murmurs, but her weight against his chest told him the spell's toll still lingered. He pressed a kiss to her temple, feeling her smile. Stubborn, she whispered. I trained under masters who thought endurance a virtue. He replied. Carrying the woman I love hardly counts as hardship. A quiet laugh fluttered from her lips. You said love. I meant it the moment I saw you under those lanterns, Rowan confessed. Though truthfully, I think I loved you long before I knew what the feeling was. Elra's fingers traced the line of his jaw. Then may it carry us wherever the forest leads. They emerged again into the spring glade. Morning mist curled over the pool's dark mirror, and birds sang bright, fearless trills. Rowan set Elra gently on a mossy rise. She drew a steadying breath. The forest speaks of calm for now, yet the order will regroup. Rowan knelt, unbuckling the leather baldric that held his sword. The weapon lay across his palms, its steel still cleaned and oiled by duty, etched with the serpent sigil. "This blade was forged to silence magic," he said, voice low. "But magic saved me as a child, and today saved my soul." Elra watched him, eyes gleaming like dawn-lit amber. "You don't have to cast it aside to honor me." "I do." Rowan gripped the hilt, then plunged the sword point first into the earth beside the pool. He released it and stepped back. Let steel feed roots instead of hatred. The ground hummed. Fine tendrils of green slid up the blade, encasing metal in living sheath until it vanished beneath soil. Rowan exhaled, lighter. Elra rose and approached him. "A symbol matters only when heart follows." She placed a hand over his chest. "And your heart is brave. I'm learning courage from you." He took her fingers, pressing them to his lips. "What shall we do now?" "Leave the edge of the wood," she said. "Deeper lies the woven valley, protected by wards older than any hunter's creed. We can live there, aid those who wander injured or lost, teach those who choose wonder over fear." Rowan's eyes softened. A haven. A beginning. Her smile turned sly. "We'll need a home. I was thinking of a cottage grown from living branches overlooking the valley's river." He chuckled. "Anything you imagine will outshine my carpentry skills." "You'll learn." She looped her arms round his neck. "The forest teaches anyone who listens." Rowan's gaze drifted to the pool ripples, recalling tears he had shed hours ago. "I want to make amends, not just hide." "We won't hide," she assured. "We'll heal. Then we reach beyond Elderwood, find others willing to see truth. Kindness spreads faster than any curse." A sudden rustle behind them made Rowan turn. The towering beast from his childhood padded into the clearing. Up close, its fur shimmered between russet and charcoal, ribs still aglow but gentle rather than menacing. Rowan stiffened by instinct, then forced his shoulders loose. Elra's voice soothed the air. "Meet Thorn, guardian of the first glade." Rowan extended a hand slowly. The beast lowered its massive head to sniff his palm, breath warm. A rumbling purr vibrated. "He remembers you," Elra said. Rowan scratched behind a tufted ear, awe flickering in his eyes. "I remember the terror I felt. Now I understand it was protection misread." "As were many things," she murmured. Thorn padded to the pool, lapping water before melting into undergrowth once more. Rowan watched him disappear with a fond smile. "Let's gather supplies," Elra suggested, brushing stray strands from her face. "The journey into Woven Valley is a day's walk. I have seeds for healing herbs, but food and blankets." Rowan interlaced their fingers. "We'll take only what we need. New beginnings shouldn't be weighed by old possessions." They spent morning hours packing satchels with dried fruit, bread, jars of honey, and bundles of soft cloth. Elra tucked vials of luminous sap between layers of wool, calling them gifts from oak spirits that healed wounds and warmed hands on cold nights. Rowan rolled spare tunics alongside a small whetstone, though he carried no blade now. Only a sturdy walking staff cut from a fallen branch that hummed faintly when Elra brushed her fingertips across its bark. By midday they stood at the forest's inner threshold, a wall of twisted trunks so dense they looked woven. Rowan paused, tilting his head to the canopy where sunlight pierced small star-shaped holes. "Will Elderwood mourn our leaving?" he asked. "The forest is not lost to us," Elra answered. "Its roots run everywhere. When we breathe, it knows." Hand in hand they stepped into shifting green. Light tempered to emerald dusk, bird songs echoing like bells. Sometimes Rowan glimpsed tiny sprites flitting over mushrooms, scattering pollen sparks. Other times the path straightened into corridors lined by colossal birches whose trunks bore ancient symbols. Elra whispered each rune's meaning: growth, shelter, awakening. And he repeated them, coaxing new syllables across his tongue. At a brook they knelt to drink. Rowan watched water swirl around his reflection, and Elra's beside it. I never thanked you properly for saving me. You thanked me by surviving, she said, and he shook his head gently. You deserve more. Pulling a silver ring from a pouch at his belt, he offered it. The order gave this when I pledged my life. I'd rather pledge it here. Elra's eyes widened. The ring's design was simple, but Rowan had polished away the serpent insignia until only a smooth band remained. I cannot accept metal forged from oaths you left behind, she murmured. Then together we forge a new vow. He dropped the ring into the brook. Water carried it a few feet before a fish caught the glimmer and nudged it onto a stone. Rowan lifted the ring again, now washed clean, and slid it onto her finger. I promise love, not chains. Elra held his gaze, tears softening her smile. And I promise the same. Their mouths met in a kiss sweet as spring water, sealing vow to river, forest, and sky. Afternoon deepened. Somewhere ahead a distant roar cascaded. Rowan realized it was a waterfall muffled by layered foliage. Elra squeezed his hand. We're near. At last the trees parted, revealing woven valley. Terraces of wildflowers, silver-green grasses, and a river winding like glass ribbon beneath a mist-tipped cataract. Sunlight poured over cliffs in golden sheets. Rowan inhaled, feeling every lungful swirl with possibility. Below, nestled against a hillock, stood a dwelling grown from living branches braided into arching walls. Pale blossoms dotted the roof, and smoke curled lazily from an open skylight. Rowan blinked. You already have a cottage here? Only the beginnings of one, Elra said. It responded to my dreams while I waited for you. They descended stepping stones to the cottage. Inside, fragrant wood smoke warmed a single chamber with curved inner walls that shimmered faintly as sap pulsed. Rowan ran his palm over living surface, marveling. Each ring of this wood marks hope you kept alive. Elra touched his shoulder. Home builds itself when two hearts choose stay over flight. They unrolled blankets near a circular hearth. Rowan unpacked the jars of honey, arranging them beside polished stone cups. Elra laughed softly. You remembered my gift of bread. Sweet things should return to givers, Rowan said. Evening approached with a burnished glow. They sat beneath arching window branch watching sunset ignite valley in rose and copper. Rowan twined a lock of Elra's hair around his finger. We'll have visitors, won't we? Lost children, weary travelers, maybe repentant hunters. They will find healing here, she said, and you will teach them what fear blinded you to. Few voices carry truth better than the one reborn. Rowan let her words settle deep. I'll start by teaching myself. The forest already guided my speech. Perhaps it can guide my hands. Elra leaned into him, head on his shoulder. It will. Someday you'll weave spells of your own shaping. Only if I can cast them with you beside me. She lifted her gaze. Always. Dusk melted into star-strewn night. Outside, fireflies drifted along riverbanks. Inside, embers glowed. Rowan stretched out on the fur-lined rug and drew Elra close, savoring the simple miracle of quiet breath, of heartbeat, echoing heartbeat. They spoke in murmurs about gardens they would plant, songs they would teach children, ways to coax vines into cradling shelves for books yet unwritten. After a time, silence blanketed them, but it was not the hush of loneliness. It was the comfortable quiet of belonging. Rowan thought of the manor's stone corridors, the order's echoing halls, and felt not a pang of loss. Here, every heartbeat spelled arrival. Elra's fingers traced the oak leaf pendant still warm against his chest. Do you remember what I said the night you left the shelter? He closed his eyes, reaching back across years, her voice young and gentle. You'll be safe here. Just rest. He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. I remember. And are you? She asked. He kissed her brow. At last. The forest answered with distant owl song. Rowan held Elra through the small hours, dreaming not of battles or scars, but of gardens bursting, of children laughing along brookstones, of a world where kindness needed no hiding. When first light silvered the skylight branches, Elra stirred. Rowan whispered, Morning, my witch of Elderwood. She smiled, voice husky with sleep. Morning, my hunter of hearts. They rose hand in hand, stepping onto dew-damp grass outside. Mist curled around their ankles, and the valley breathed. Rowan felt the ground's hum sync with his pulse. Elra turned to him, eyes shining. Remember, you were never meant to destroy me. He brushed a thumb across her cheek. I was meant to find you. She leaned in, their foreheads touched, and the rising sun painted them gold while the forest, at peace, sang quiet hymns for two souls finally, irrevocably home.